must remember the school custodians, because without them, none of us would be here. Now let's get down to the business. We've set up a protocol for the forum tonight, and all the candidates have been briefed and they've agreed to follow it. Their answers are going to be limited by time, and Mary Palanchi, right here in the front row, is our timer tonight. She will hold up a yellow card when there are 15 seconds left, and a red card when it's time to stop. I'm going to ask the candidates to please finish the sentence that they are on. When they've reached their time limit, when the red card goes up, I will simply say finish. I'm friends with all of them, so I know that we're going to listen and do well, right? Tonight's forum has been designed and will be conducted to allow our candidates the most time to answer questions, because quite frankly, that's why we're all here. The candidates are seated in alphabetical order by first name. Tonight with us is Andy Bronick, Dana WACHS, right now. In the interest of getting as many questions asked as possible, I'm going to please ask you to refrain from any applauding or signs of appreciation during the forum. You can applaud your heart's content when it's over. So please be respectful of all of our candidates as well as the people that are in the audience tonight, so that we can get through this forum in a timely manner. We're going to begin with opening statements. Our opening statements are 1.5 minutes by each candidate. And candidates, for these you may stand as you wish. The candidates have drawn for order, and we're going to start with Matt. And then we're going to move to Matt's left. 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt Flynn, and I'm a candidate for governor. And I want to thank these Side Progressives and all of you for inviting us today. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running. I'm a Navy veteran, and I was the chair of the State Democratic Party for 2 terms. And when I was the chair, we elected Democratic Governor Tony Earl, Democratic Legislature. We eliminated our party debt, a rather substantial one, and we also built the Young Democrats by their membership by quite a bit. I'm running simply because I'm not going to stand by and watch our democracy destroyed. Donald Trump in Washington is running a corrupt administration. He betrayed us to the Russians for bribery and blackmail, and he's dividing us racially and ethnically. And in Madison, Scott Walker is running a corrupt administration. That crooked Foxconn deal, where he turned over $4.5 billion in our taxpayer money to a foreign corporation to let them come in and pollute our water, and he gave them the eminent domain power to throw people out of their homes if they needed to build a plant. I will stop that. I will stop it through litigation. The first day I'm governor, I will stop the effort to stop Foxconn. The second thing I want to say is this. We're going to talk about a lot of issues today, and I'm looking forward to it. I would repeal right to work, repeal Act 10, restore prevailing wage, raise the minimum wage, get back that $1 billion that he took, that he turned down for Medicaid, and the $800 million in trade money. I hope at the end of this, you get your support. Thank you.
Equal with the tables, otherwise we're going to continue to have feedback.
I'm Mike McCabe. Wisconsin is becoming a shadow of its former self. So much we're losing so much of what has made Wisconsin special. That makes me want a new governor. And I got a sneaky suspicion you want a new governor too. But I tell you, that goal aims too low. We also need a new politics. We've got a government that works extremely well for a wealthy and well-connected and privileged few, but it's failing so many other people. It's leaving people behind. We can't afford to let that happen anymore. I've spent most of my adult life trying to expose and break the grip of big money in politics. We need to shake up and transform that political system. Back at one of the darkest hours in our country's history, the greatest president the Democratic Party ever produced said the forces of organized money are unanimous in their hatred for me, and I welcome their hatred. We need to revive that spirit in our time.
Please refrain from applauding.
I'll try to.
Talk among yourselves.
Thank you. Well, I guess what we're going to have to do is look forward to the fact that the next governor may or may not have a legislature that is going to be cooperative with the goals that we're going to set as a new agenda for the state of Wisconsin. One of the things that's going to be critical is establishing a legislative agenda that is going to represent the ideals, is going to represent the aspirations of the people of Wisconsin. We're going to have to start out repairing a lot of mistakes. We're going to have to repair the right to collective bargaining. We're going to have to repair the injustice in our economic system in this state. We're going to have to repair a recent deficit in legislation, which was the inability now of cities in the state to actually provide road space for bicycles and sidewalks. This is where the present legislature has taken us. Unfortunately, the next legislature will have a myriad of bills facing us, repairing, again, the loss of landlord-tenant law in Wisconsin that was fair to both parties. I think it's critical to understand that in the future of this state, whether we're talking economics or we're talking environmental challenges, it's going to take leadership, experienced leadership, in working with the legislature and the people of the state. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tony Evers. I'm a candidate for governor. And actually, I'm going to start out, we've already heard lots of bad things about Scott Walker and how hell's breaking loose in the state. I want to talk about myself just for a second, and I will tell you it's a positive story. I was born and raised in Plymouth, Wisconsin. And if you don't know, Plymouth, Wisconsin is the cheese capital of the world, and you know that because there's a great big sign downtown that says cheese capital of the world. Additionally, there is a big plastic cow downtown too. So that kind of all fits together to the background I came from. I met my wife in kindergarten, and this is Potter's kindergarten classroom. Kathy's here someplace in the audience. We have 3 kids, 6 grandkids, and all 6 grandkids are public school kids here in the Madison Metropolitan School District, as well as my 3 children all went to public schools. We lived all across the state of Wisconsin. I started my career as a teacher in Toma, an administrator, and we moved to Oakville, which is just outside of Fond du Lac. We have lived in Amro and Oshkosh. And I can tell you why those things are all important. Not only did they kind of instill in us what's good about Wisconsin and the middle of the state. The middle of the state has about 40% of the votes in this election, folks. So we have to make sure that we understand them. And also, I've won 3 times as state superintendent. The last time I won was 70% of the vote, and I won 70 of 72 counties, including Milwaukee County, and thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Andy Bronick. I can still see all of you, mostly with these lights on, but by show of hands, who thinks politics as usual is working? Anybody? Let's see your hand. Anybody? I don't either. That's exactly why I'm here. I'm the outsider in this race. I'm a business guy. I spent 35 years helping people who couldn't go to a bank and get a conventional bank loan to access the capital they needed to solve problems, to grow, and to create good-paying, family-sustaining jobs. I built one of the largest businesses in the world of its type, doing exactly that. And I'll tell you what, when you look around this room and you think about the things that are important to us, getting back to education, getting back to health care that's affordable for everyone, getting back to a situation where our schools are awesome. Okay, that's why I'm here, because this does not look anything like the Wisconsin that I grew up in. And when I'm your governor, we'll get back to looking like that Wisconsin and being the Wisconsin that we want for our future. Thank you.
Hi folks, I'm Dana WACHS. I represent Eau Claire in the state legislature. A few years ago, some friends of mine asked me, and some folks from down here asked me to run for the legislature. You see, I've been a trial lawyer for 32 years. I often tell people, you know, I'm taking medication for that. But I'll tell you, it's a good background to have right now for me. I'm a lifelong Democrat, started licking stamps for Hubert Humphrey at age 10. Worked for Ted Kennedy in 1980. I've been in this all of my life, mostly as a volunteer, but for 32 years I've represented regular folks in the middle class and people trying to get into the middle class against some of the most powerful, wealthy, special interests in the United States. And when I got elected to the legislature 3 years ago, I came down here and very quickly found out that the same people, the same powerful, wealthy interest groups that I've been fighting for 32 years are running this Capitol building. That is going to stop, and that's why I'm running. I believe we need to have health care for all. I believe we need to have economic justice. That means rolling back right to work. That means rolling back Walker's anti-union legislation, because if you want a vibrant economy, you got to make darn sure that the people in the middle class are getting adequate money for their jobs, and that the middle class is expanding. And I think I'm done with my time, so we'll talk a little bit more later. Thank you very much.
People are hurting. They don't have money in their pocket. They haven't had a raise in sometimes years. Our wages in Wisconsin are 18th lowest in the nation. My vision is very different than where we are today. My vision is about putting people first. First when it comes to priorities in state government, first when it comes to spending and policies that the state is engaged in. Making a difference in people's lives is something all of us as Democrats need to think about when we think about how to win elections. And for me, that means things like the free tuition bill that I introduced. It means refinancing student debt. It means health care for all. It means a living wage. It means hiring back the scientists at DNR and putting them in charge of helping us deal with climate change. Safe water, air to breathe. All of these things that I'm talking about, I have dealt with in the legislature and funded in an alternative budget that I've written in 4 different cycles, including $100 million in needs-based financial aid for the UW.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for being here and thank the Side Progressives for hosting. My name is KELDA Royce and I'm running for governor because I want to restore opportunity and fairness to Wisconsin. I want to make our state the very best place to raise a family and the very best place to grow a small business. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Marshfield and I'm a proud product of Madison Public Schools. And even though we're here at LaFollette, a great school, I'm still a pro-Golder through and through, and I think Representative Sargent would agree. Maybe that's no applause, but we know where we're coming from. After school, I went away for college. I went to NYU, but I came back to Wisconsin. I came back to earn a law degree at UW-Madison. And that was an incredible decision because I had so many opportunities here. And I want those same opportunities for my children and for all the children in this state. After law school, I didn't take a high-paying corporate job. Instead, I went to fight on the front lines for our progressive values. I became the executive director of NARAL Pro-Choice Wisconsin so that I could stand up and be a champion for reproductive rights and when they were under attack, as they are today. Then, after 4 years, I ran for the state assembly. I wanted to take my experience as a movement politician, as somebody who cares about progressive values, to the state legislature, and I did. I was able to pass progressive legislation on so many issues that mattered. Then for the last 5 years, I've been starting and running my own small business, so I understand how we can build the jobs of the future. I can talk, unlike Governor Walker, about actually creating jobs.
How's everybody doing? I'm last. I guess that's what you get for coming last, but I was actually at the firehouse this morning working a shift, and I had somebody come in for me. He came in a little bit late. But anyway, my name is MAHLON Mitchell. I'm a firefighter here with the city of Madison. Been a firefighter for 20 years. Also, I'm the state president of Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin. Also the local president here in Firefighters Local 311. I live in the Madison area, I live in Fitchburg with my wife, who's a Delta flight attendant. My 2 kids, I have a daughter, Cece, Sienna. She's a UW Oshkosh freshman. I have a son who's in 8th grade in Verona School. So I'm running because we need to change. Governor Walker's had 8 years. He's divided us, he's split us apart, and separated us. And we need to turn the page on that. Since we are in a high school, believe it or not, I went to the same high school as Governor Walker. I was born in Milwaukee, but actually grew up in Delavan, Wisconsin. Now, I went to the same high school as Governor Walker. Now, we obviously took some different classes. But in saying that, I'm running because we need to change. We need real leadership in the State House. My job on duty, as firefighters, we respond to those on the worst days of their lives. And when our community, and when people are at their worst, we have to be at our best. We need that in the State House. Off duty, I represent workers. I represent workers my entire life for the last 20 years. So I will continue to represent workers and take that same mantra of all hands working for people to the State House. We need real leadership.
Finish.
I'm done. Melissa's yelling at me.
All right. This question is for each of the candidates. We're going to start with Dana, based on our drawing, and then we're going to move to Dana's left. Candidates, you may stand if you wish for these questions, but as you can tell, we're having a little feedback from on that side of the table. You have 1 minute to respond. Dana, what will you do to earn the vote of residents in Wisconsin who think that they do not have a voice in our government?
You know, that's a fundamental question, and it's perhaps one of the most important. We need to reach out and we need to bring people back into the blue column. We are working day and night in northern and western Wisconsin, and we have a campaign throughout the state to make sure that people understand that this is their government. This should be their government. Think of the tradition that we've had in this state, the Wisconsin idea. It used to mean, in part, that the legislation that comes through that building is legislation to benefit the most amount of people possible. We need our Wisconsin idea back, and that's the approach we're taking to get votes. People that typically had been with us in the past need to be with us again. I was endorsed by Dave Obey, who represented the 7th Congressional District for 40 years, because he knows I can carry the progressive message. He knows I've got the backbone to do this work. Thank you.
After 2016, my state rep, in the election, my state rep lost. He was one of the last rural Democrats in the Assembly. And I went on a personal journey to try and understand what happened in 2016. I talked with election judges and looked at ward level data. I sat in the Trumbull County Courthouse, the center of this district, and I physically counted new voter registrations. I learned that a different set of people went to the polls in 2012 than in 2016. A whole lot of new voters came out and voted for Trump, and a lot of Democrats who usually vote in presidential years stayed home. This means that we need to talk more democratic, more progressive as Democrats, and talk about things that really make a difference in people's lives. And we're going to have an opportunity to talk about some of those things today.
Thank you. For the last 8 years, Scott Walker has treated us like enemies. He used the words divide and conquer. And that is a poison on our state, and it's going to end when one of us is the governor, probably me. I think we have to be really explicit, and we have to go to places where people disagree with us, and we have to listen. And we cannot afford to write off any single vote. But I also think we have to really be honest with the fact that people feel that there is an urban-rural divide in the state, and it is because Scott Walker and the Republicans have used it to exploit us and divide us. We have to talk about all of the challenges that we have in common. Urban areas and rural areas. We have lack of transit and transportation. We have lack of infrastructure. Our schools are underfunded and under-resourced, and our local governments don't have the money that they need. So there's so much more that we have in common than that which divides us. And those are the things that we need to talk about as progressives to help bring people together and help them see that we are fighting with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Government has to be for the people. I represent a statewide firefighters union. We have over 4,000 members. From north is Rhinelander, Superior, and south is Kenosha, Racine, and Beloit. And when we were asked in Act 10, and I have proven that we will always stand with people, with our brothers and sisters. Because in Act 10, as you remember, and some of you may remember I ran into the 2012 Lieutenant Governor's race. But in Act 10, we were asked actually to sit aside, sit on the sidelines, not to be part of any protests, not to be part of any rallies, because you're exempt. Police and fire, we were exempt from Act 10. But we came out with our brothers and sisters because we came out with the worker bee. So I not only told Governor Walker, no, we will not take our exemption and run, I told him, hell no. We're going to be there, we're going to fight with our brothers and sisters in the world, in the workers of the state. So whether you're in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, or Superior, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Wausau, Milwaukee, Janesville, or Madison, a struggle is a struggle. And we have to get back to making sure government is for people, we have to put people over politics, and I'll pass it on to Matt.
Thank you very much. The ship I was on in the Navy, we had sailors from Mississippi and Alabama, New York, California, Wyoming, Illinois, Wisconsin. There was no urban, rural
Mr.
divide.
Flynn, please step back for the microphones.
There was no urban, rural divide. There was no ethnic divide. There was no rich, poor divide. We worked together. We stood watch together. We went on liberty together. The message I take throughout this whole state is this is a 72-county government. And we are all in this together. We're all shipmates. That used to be the way it was in Wisconsin, and it will be again following next November when I'm governor. Thank you.
I'm the one candidate in this race, the only candidate in this race who was born and raised on a farm. And that's important because it's so critical that we reconnect with every part of Wisconsin, including rural Wisconsin. Democrats cannot win, they cannot be in a position of governing by simply winning Milwaukee and Madison. I've had the chance to live in the city, I've had the chance to live out in the country. And there are too many forgotten people living in too many forgotten places around our state. Our campaign has already traveled over 40,000 miles just since September 12th, crisscrossing the state, going to small towns and places all in every nook and cranny of Wisconsin to listen, to reach out to them, to offer them representation because they feel written off, they feel looked down upon, they feel forgotten, whether it's in the inner city or out in rural Wisconsin. We have to listen and reach out and make them a better offer than they've been made for a very long time, and that's how we take the state back.
Friday night, Sarah and I had dinner at Quinn's on South Boulevard in Baraboo. And there were three things that we learned. One, the gerrymandering has to end if we're going to restore the government to the people of this state. That's one of the first priorities for the governor of this state if we're going to answer the question, how to restore our voice in government. The second thing we're going to do is all the things that we fought for 50 years to make sure that everybody had a right to register to vote and access to the polls. I want to point out that while suppression of the vote took place throughout the state of Wisconsin in response to the awful legislation brought to us by the last state government and Republicans, we did not see a suppression of the vote in Madison. The third thing we're going to do is move the date of the primary. August is absolutely insane. Everybody should be on vacation.
Stop.
And I'm the only candidate who was born and raised on the grounds of a tuberculosis sanatorium. I have to tell you, this race, to get at the place we want to be, this race has got to be about treating people with dignity. Divide and conquer is gone. And we're getting there. Over the last 3 general elections, over 1 million people in the state of Wisconsin voted to increase their own taxes for their public schools. Half of those people voted for Donald Trump. So there are issues out there that do threaten, that will treat people with dignity. whether it's our natural resources, whether it's bringing back the middle class, whether it's not K through 12 and K through 20 education. Those are issues that thread the needle that will bring people to our side. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Andy Groening. So, I spent 35 years problem solving. It's something I really enjoy. And I'll tell you how you do it is you ask people who are confronted by those exact problems from every different angle for input as to how you solve it, how it affects their lives. So before I decided to run for governor, I traveled the state of Wisconsin for 18 months. I talked to over 700 people. I didn't go looking for Democrats or Republicans. I went looking for people who lived in Wisconsin, who are actually confronted by problems of the fact that we're not creating good paying jobs, and we're taking our schools apart at the seams. I wanted to hear from people who were homeless. I talked to people who were billionaires. I talked to students and teachers, and I talked to administrators. And I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, what everybody had in common was nobody thinks government's listening. I want the very best ideas. I don't care where they come from, as long as they put the people of the state of Wisconsin first.
All right, Kathleen, this is a question for you. And if you could please pass the microphone to Kathleen. Kathleen, what is your vision for retaining talented people so that they choose Wisconsin first in order to help grow our economy? You have 1 minute and you may stand.
We are losing kids, young people. Our rural areas are aging. First of all, we need to invite them into higher education with free tuition. That's the bill that I wrote, is free tuition for tech colleges and 2-year campuses. We need to refinance student debt. We need to open wide 4-year and graduate education, which is the $100 million I talked about in financial aid for the UW. And then we need to change the way we do the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and take the money and use it in small loans for entrepreneurs that want to get started all across the state. This means opening wide the door for anybody that wants to start a new business or come up with a new idea.
Now, Dana, you have 30 seconds to respond. If you disagree with what Kathleen said, and please remain seated.
I don't know that I have any specific disagreements with her. However, if you take a look at, if we want to retain people here, we got to make darn sure that we do, in fact, refinance student loans, that we support our education system, and we make communities livable. Eau Claire is now the second fastest growing city in the state of Wisconsin, due in large part to the fact that we have a very progressive city council, which I was on. And if you want to see what progressive leadership can do for communities, take a look at that.
Finish.
We've got...
KELDA, you have 30 seconds to respond as well to Kathleen and Dana's answers.
Great. Well, as a person, I'm 38 years old, and I had the choice to go and live in a lot of places. I lived in New York and I've lived abroad. I chose to be in Wisconsin because it's a good place for my family. I want that to remain the case. As someone who founded a startup, even though Wisconsin has been dead last in startup job creation under Governor Walker, I know what it takes to attract people my age and younger. Yes, student loan debt financing, but we also have to make it more affordable to have kids. We need to have universal paid family leave and address affordable child care if we want people my age to stay.
KELDA, you may keep the microphone. This question is for you, and you may stand, and you'll have 1 minute to answer. How will you fund road construction and repair, as well as other necessary infrastructure concerns that are plaguing Wisconsin?
Well, this is a really important question, and I actually think that there's a possibility of getting some bipartisan agreement on this. We really need to hammer the current governor, because our roads have gone from middle of the road, actually they were great when I was a kid, then middle of the road, and under Governor Walker, we're now 49th in the nation. It costs every driver about an average of $670 per year because we have such bad roads. I think we need to look at raising the gas tax and re-indexing it to inflation. It was a terrible decision to stop doing that. And that's the only way that we're going to have the kind of roads that businesses need, as well as everyday drivers. In a rural state like Wisconsin, that's especially important because mass transit isn't an option in most of the state. But secondly, we do need to take advantage of federal funds for mass transit, and we need to encourage biking and walking in areas where it's possible too, and that goes to restoring the law that allows for complete streets. Thank you very much.
Kathleen, you have 30 seconds.
Stay seated. I would agree with what KELDA said. I would also add that we need to consider other ways to increase revenue. For example, did you know, as taxpayers in Wisconsin, that you are part owner of 624 miles of railroad that the state owns? We should charge a modest $10 a car for the railroads that use the state-owned rail lines.
Mayland, you have 30 seconds. Please remain seated.
Okay. Transportation. I've been endorsed by the operating engineers. So if you didn't know, they endorsed Walker the last 2 terms he's ran. So we're already bringing people together in my campaign. The reason I say that is because the operating engineers actually build roads, and they help do that. We need to invest in infrastructure. We do that by actually indexing a gas tax. I agree with everybody here on the panel. But we do that in investing in opportunities in our state. We can't keep sending money back to the federal government and then not paying the bills that we have put in front of us. So we need to invest in Wisconsin, invest in infrastructure. Then people like Foxconn and other places will want to come here.
Thank you. Mayland, you may keep the microphone.
I can stand
You
it.
can stand. You have 1 minute. What will you do to address the problems faced by struggling families?
Problems faced by struggling families? Well, the governor will go around and talk, and we just can't keep talking about what the governor is bad at. We have to talk about what we're good at. And as progressive and liberals, we're good at actually taking care of people. The governor will go around and tout his unemployment rate of being 3% now, which is the lowest, but historically we have been the lowest in the country for a long time. What we have to do is invest in opportunities. I have a daughter who goes to UW Oshkosh. I want her to stay in the state of Wisconsin. We can't just talk about unemployment rate. We have to talk about the quality of life. An unemployment rate means nothing when people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So we have to invest in healthcare, our education, but also raise wages. I have been a proponent. I got endorsed by SEIU because I believe in $15 an hour as a base floor for a minimum wage, and then raising from there around the rest of the state. So I believe we need to invest in people in the state of Wisconsin, invest in our people because we have the best worker, we have the best resources. And we can do this together, and together we rise, and we work together all across the state. We will be able to invest in people.
KELDA, you have 30 seconds to respond. Please stay seated.
Well, I agree. We have to support a living wage. It is an abomination that there are people who work and who live in poverty. If you're working full-time, you should be able to afford a life with dignity. We also have to expand Badger Care and make it available for everyone. And we have to allow people to buy into the Wisconsin retirement system. When you're talking about struggling families...
Stop.
Thanks. So when you're talking about struggling families, we have to make sure that they have opportunities, not just for secure employment, but that they have clean water and clean air, that they have a safe place to live.
Matt, you have 30 seconds to respond.
The question is, how would I help struggling families in 30 seconds? So here's what I would do. 2 things. First of all, I'd open up Badger Care to all. Health care costs are killing people. The second thing I'd do is I'd put a stop to drug testing food stamp applicants. Some poor woman with kids goes there to try to get them fed, and they're going to humiliate her and try to deter her. That's not going to happen under me. That's a moral issue. And I will get rid of work requirements and drug testing requirements for medical care.
Stop. Please pass the microphone down to Tony. This is a question that each of you will have the opportunity to answer. You have 1 minute to respond. You may stand if you wish. After Tony is done, we will move to the left, so it will come down to Andy. The budget is a place where you can fund your priorities. What 3 priorities will be in your first budget, and what current priorities will you defund?
We will defund WEDA. We will start out with a real positive agenda. K through 20 education is underfunded, even in this year of Scott Walker's largesse through K through 12. Tongue in cheek there, folks. Anyway, he took $1 billion away from us several years ago, and we're continuing to suffer from that going forward. We have to fund our public school system, and we have to do better for, I'm on the board of regents, I get it. We need more money for the University of Wisconsin system and treat the people that work there with respect before they all leave. That's number one. Number two is restore the middle class. And I need to go in a little bit of detail on that. I will reduce state taxes for folks in the middle class. I'm running out of time, damn it. Oh man, I quit. I just took that breath of fresh air. Anyway, I'm very sorry. I'll get back to that one.
Andy, you have 1 minute.
Okay, real quickly, got to talk fast. I used to be an auctioneer. Here's the deal, okay? I prioritize jobs. We need good paying, family sustaining jobs. We need great schools. Schools are the best choice for our kids. We need to make sure everybody in the state of Wisconsin has affordable health care. I would not, however, get rid of WEDIC. I would change everything about WEDIC. In fact, WEDIC's gone and comes together with the Department of Workforce Development, because we should have the group that's actually looking for ways to create good-paying jobs together with the people who need those good-paying jobs, so that we actually identify ways to grow our economy and put the people in place all over the state so that we can help grow our businesses. Let's make it the Department of Entrepreneurialism. Let's make sure that we understand that there's a yellow card up, and that's not how long I have, right? I have more time. I have 15 seconds. I'll start talking slow. Listen, the bottom line is we have to think outside the box to create the kind of jobs that pay families so that they can retire with dignity. And that's it.
I would do away with WEDIC as well. I'm on the WEDIC board. I stood and fought Foxconn to their face. That board has a troubled history. It's history when I'm governor. We would institute a more standard Department of Commerce. Within the Department of Commerce, we would have an office of retention of business. If you notice that Walker hasn't done much on that. When we lost Oscar Mayer, we were losing paper factories on the east side of the state, left and right. We need an office of retention of business, and we need to have business development. We're last in the nation in business development. We're also going to have Badger Care buy-in. That's the first thing I'm doing. And before the budget's submitted, we're going to reinstitute the wage board. You realize that the governor of the state of Wisconsin used to have a wage board which would analyze wages statewide to see what, if any, changes need to be made. Well, folks, lots of changes need to be made. I am clearly for $15 an hour, but there's a lot of areas in the state that we can afford more than $15 an hour. But we need to have that wage board to analyze these things.
I strongly believe that we need to change our healthcare system. And I would work on creating our own marketplace, which allows us to give that Badger Care buy-in that so many people are talking about. I would take the Medicaid expansion money and use the cash that's freed up for investing in community-based mental health and addiction recovery services. I would change the way that we fund schools, and I would make sure that we were fair to both inner city schools and rural schools. And I would hire back the scientists, fund DNR, make sure that we're enforcing all of our clean air and water laws. And regarding WEDIC, I would bring it back under the state as the Department of Commerce, where we would keep an eye on it. I would fund, and I have my alternative budget, funded these things by taking just a portion of one of the tax credits, the manufacturing tax credit.
Wisconsin used to be the education state, but this governor over the last 8 years has taken $1 billion out of K-12. We need to be the education state. So the first thing I'm going to fund in my budget is our schools. And that doesn't just mean K-12, it also means higher ed, and also early childhood education, because the more we learn about children's brain development, the more we understand how critical birth to 5 is. The second thing I would do is invest in clean energy jobs. We must do it if we want to protect our planet from climate change, but we also need to do it because that's how we're going to have long-paying jobs in the future that can be outsourced. We need to be competing with China and other countries that are already advanced in the clean tech sector. Next, I'll enact my small business package to help spur entrepreneurship in Wisconsin so that people can do what I did, take a risk and start a business. The things I would defund, mass incarceration. It is long past time that we stop spending more money on our prisons than on educating people through the UW system. That ends with me. The next thing I'll do is end corporate welfare because I want to pay for all the investments that we need to make in our future. Thank you.
First thing I'm going to do as governor is I'm going to have one hell of a party. You're all invited. But the first thing we're doing in the budget, we're going to make sure everyone has bad care and has access to actually adequate health care and good health care. It's a right. We all should have health care. Education, you can't take $1.6 billion out of public education in 2012, then put $638 million back now because you're running for governor and call that progress. That's like taking a knife, sticking it 8 inches in my back, pulling it out 4 inches. I'm supposed to say thank you. We can't do that. We have to adequately fund education. That's our best commodities, our children, their best currency is their education. I'm going to make sure our roads are the best. We're going to be #1 in roads and infrastructure. We also have to make sure health care is available to everybody. Our economy is going to be the best because we have to make sure we invest in the state of Wisconsin. We have to make sure we raise wages, and I will start a wage commission. What I will defund, I will blow up weed and we'll start all over and actually get money back to people. The agriculture manufacturing tax credit does not work. When 75% of the people that get the money make over $1 million, that's a problem. We need to invest in people at the bottom. This is about top and bottom, not about Republican versus Democrat.
Thank you. The major two focuses in my first budget were the education and healthcare. And education, my father was in the faculty at UWM for 34 years. And I'm watching a great university be slowly torn apart and demoralized, one of the greatest in the world. And I'm not going to put up with that. I will fully fund the University of Wisconsin, fully fund the whole system. I'll restore statutory tenure, recommit to the mission statement, and tell everybody how proud I am of that university. The second I'll do is K-12 education. Fully fund that so municipalities don't have to go out and hold their own referenda and raise their own property taxes. When it comes to health care, I would open badger care to everyone. In addition, I'd go out and fight for the $1 billion that Scott Walker turned down simply to pose as a conservative when he ran for president. That was wrong of him to do. It was immoral. People got thrown off of health care, and some of them statistically had to have lived a shorter life than they needed to. So health care and education are the first two. There's so many others, taxes. My time is up. Thank you very much.
2 rules for government. First of all, what government does has to be done for the whole of society and not just a few. So we don't create a sturdy economy by feeding the rich. We do it by investing in the empowerment of 5.5 million people in the state to do more for themselves and for each other and for their families. That means, and the other rule is that if a program works, you keep it and fund it, and if a program doesn't work, you get rid of it. By that standard, we eliminate 2 programs. One is taxpayer subsidized private schooling. The voucher program should be ended. And the other is the corporate welfare office, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. That should be ended. We take that money and instead invest it in debt-free education, health care for all, get everybody a living wage, invest in internet everywhere to every doorstep, and then let's focus on making our state's goal becoming the first state in the country to be fully powered by renewable energy.
Well, some of you have heard me answer this question before, and you don't get 3 answers, you get 5. The first thing is housing first. It is just a tragedy and unacceptable that the state of Wisconsin, unlike, for example, Minnesota, does not have a housing program. And I want to point out that we made a commitment to build 1,000 new units of affordable housing here in Madison a few years ago. We're over 550, and we're on track to meet that goal. I know how to do that. Second is transportation. Transportation includes roads, but also public transportation. And we know how critical that is in so many different respects of all of our lives, particularly in an urban setting. With transportation comes communication, and yes, communication means accessibility to the internet. Quality child care. That is essential for a growing economy. And healthcare, which includes not just nutrition, but also dealing with the challenges of substance abuse and mental health and education.
So this question is for Dana, and it's going to be asked by a LaFollette High School student. If you would please help me in welcoming Sabil Samra to this.
all for coming to LaFollette. So, Dana, as a student, and this is a question I know many students have, I'd like to hear what behavioral and mental health programs you would like to support and or expand in our K-12 public schools.
You have 1 minute, you may stand.
It's important, it's very important that we expand these programs, there's no question about it. I want to fully fund education, K through 12, as well as our universities and our technical colleges. And all of that's related, because right now it's hard for us to train as many healthcare workers as is humanly possible. You know, the studies show that if you have good healthcare workers and good healthcare systems, you save $2 for every dollar that's put into those programs. So it makes sense economically, it makes sense in every respect, but most importantly, these are our people. These are our people. We need to invest in our people. And this kind of care and this kind of support is critical. We will clearly do this, and we will invest in it.
All right, Sabine is going to stay up here to listen to two of you respond as well. You have 30 seconds. Please remain seated. Andy.
So, mental health care in high schools, critical. Huge shortage in the state of Wisconsin. In my former high school, Nicolay, we tragically lost a young man to suicide this year. So it's not just a problem in high schools, it's a problem throughout our state. It's a problem with incarceration. It's a problem with making sure that people have the kind of support that they need from live bodies that they can talk to that can actually help people to find their way back to mental health. Thank you.
Kathleen, you have 30 seconds.
This is why we need to change the funding system for schools, because all over the state, people are losing the support services for mental health and special ed. We also need to invest in a community-based system so that children have the pediatric mental health services that they need. All up and down western Wisconsin, we don't have a child psychiatrist. They don't exist. They have to do things by telemedicine from other areas. This is a very serious problem and it needs our attention.
Thank you very much. I hope that you all will just take one moment to thank Sabine for joining us. That was a question that was put together by the student leadership here at LaFollette High School. Matt, this is a question for you. You will have 1 minute to answer it, and you may stand. What environmental issues will you prioritize?
You say environmental issues? Yeah. The first thing I would do is restore the independence of the DNR. We have an anti-science administration right now, and they fired a lot of scientists, and they're letting industry write their own permits. So these mega wells that they're drilling, industry is permitted to write the permits. They're permanent permits, and they can't take into account, they're directed not to take into account any damage to neighboring streams, rivers, or lakes. That's just plain wrong. We were the environmental state. We're the state of Alden Leopold, John Weir, Gaylord Nelson, and then we're getting slowly to have the dirtiest water in the country rather than cleanest. So I would do that. The CAFOs, the concentrated animal feeding operations, have to be heavily zoned and heavily regulated. Right now, they're poisoning water up in Kewanee. Now they're doing it down near the Darlington and Monroe area and all over the state. I would be an environmental governor, and it's sad that I even have to say it, because we at one time were the environmental state. Thank you.
Malin, you have 30 seconds to respond. Please remain seated.
One of the best things about Wisconsin is our natural resources. So first thing I would do as your governor is I would fully fund and make sure we adequately staff the DNR. When you have CAFOs, as Matt said, and we have high capacity wells that are poisoning our water, that's a problem. When you have a company like Foxconn that's able to come in and we ease environmental protections, that's a problem. So I would fully fund DNR and make sure we take care of our natural resources, because that's what makes Wisconsin great.
I didn't have to say stop that time.
I'll keep going. So the other thing,
Mike, you have 30 seconds.
Hey, a good place to start would be to put back the mention of climate change on the DNR's website that's been scrubbed from that website. But beyond that, nobody should turn on a water faucet anywhere in Wisconsin and be afraid to drink what comes out. We have to restore protection of our land and our air and our water.
All right, Mike, this is your question, actually. You have 1 minute and you may stand. How will you increase income diversity and racial diversity in Wisconsin's post-secondary schools?
We've got to make a commitment to funding education in a way that it's not only sensitive to property value, but student need. We need to make school aid geared to the need in those schools, and those schools in rural areas and in inner cities deserve more aid because they face greater challenges. That's a huge start. And look, beyond that, we have to go way beyond the schools. We have to address mass incarceration and the root causes of mass incarceration, because we do have a situation in Wisconsin where more of our state budget goes to pay for prisons than for the entire university system. And unless we address those root causes, we won't have the resources to properly invest in schools where the need is greatest.
Matt, you have 30 seconds. Please remain seated.
Thank you. Two things. One is, I would provide free tuition for the first 2 years of post-secondary education. Technical colleges, two-year college, and the first 2 years of university. To take the economic strain out of people, diverse people and economically diverse people. Second, I would legalize marijuana, and I would pardon everybody in the jail and prison system who's there on low-level possession offenses and clean it out. Because a lot of people pick up that kind of thing, 2 possessions is a felony, and they're deterred from going on to any further education.
Paul, you have 30 seconds. Please remain.
Thank you. I want to recount a story. I was addressing a group of retired school teachers a number of years ago, and I rhetorically asked them, what is the greatest impediment to a child's learning during the course of the school day? And half the audience said hunger, and they're absolutely correct. I make that point that you've got to understand that there are all these other areas we went over before: housing, transportation, childcare, that all relate outside of the classroom to a child's learning.
Thank you. This is a lightning round. Yes or no, please. For those of you who know me and my policies, this isn't going to be a tough one for you. We're going to start with KELDA, and we're going to go to KELDA's left. Please provide a 1-sentence answer and remain seated. Will you support the legalization of medicinal or recreational marijuana in Wisconsin?
Yes, I will to both. Both because we cannot afford to use our scarce criminal justice resources to prosecute people for this, and also because it's just the right thing to do.
And to your left.
Yes, I will support both, and I will take any money and I will tax it appropriately. And any money we derive from the sale of marijuana, recreational, we will make sure that we take all 100% of those dollars and put it towards the real crisis, which is the opioid crisis in our state.
I would legalize both, as I think I just said before. I would also pardon everybody in our prison and jail system who are there in low-level, non-violent, non-drug, non-gang-related offenses. I would tax and regulate and limit its people over 21.
I favor full legalization of marijuana, both medicinal and personal use, and I would tax the legal sales of marijuana, use that money to both boost education funding and to address the opioid and meth crises.
Yes, but I do not believe it is the most important issue in this campaign. I would much rather focus on the challenges of behavioral health and reforming the correctional system.
Cancer survivor, I'm in favor of using it for medicine. I would like to have, however, the recreational piece to be given to the people of the state via referendum.
Yes and yes.
Yes, we are putting people in prison. It's $30,000 a year to put someone in prison, and this is just ridiculous. This has just got to stop. Yes.
I'm a co-sponsor of the medical marijuana bill, and if your bill came to me, I would sign it.
Thank you. Paul, this is your question. You will have 1 minute. You may stand. How will you focus on job creation and retention in Wisconsin be different in what Governor Walker's commitment to these goals has been?
Well, the governor's program is completely backwards. If you look at the research and the work of the Kaufman Foundation, which is probably the best source of information and studies of how capitalism works, they repeatedly tell you two things. One, grow your own businesses locally. That is really how you build an economy. And two, it is small businesses. It is small businesses that create the greatest number of jobs and the jobs with the greatest value. I want to also point out that the city of Madison is now in its second year on a 3-year plan to establish a minimum wage of $15 an hour for every city employee, and that is critical. I'd ask you, with my limited time, to think about what we did with Exact Sciences. Yes, you have to be able to make agreements with the private sector, but you don't give away the ranch. You have to do it intelligently, you have to do it at a modest cost, you have to have an immediate payback, and you have to be able to trust the governor who makes the agreement.
Finish. Mike, please remain seated. You'll have 30 seconds to respond.
You don't build a sturdy economy from the top down by showering tax breaks and state subsidies on a few with the hopes that they work magic for the rest of us. You build it from the bottom up by empowering people to do more for themselves. You do it with a living wage, you do it with health care for all, you do it with internet everywhere, you do it with debt-free education.
And Tony, you have 30 seconds. Please remain seated.
We have to regionalize economic development in the state. It cannot be top-down, absolutely not. We need to give the people at the local and regional level the chances to make those decisions. This is about Main Street, Wisconsin. It's not about the Fox House. It's about Main Street, Wisconsin. Additionally, the recent UW study said we need, in order to keep our young people here, our millennials, we have to invest in our schools. But Main Street, Main Street, Main Street.
Thank you, Tony. You may keep the microphone. If this is your question, you'll have 1 minute to respond and you may stand. What solutions can you offer to Wisconsin's graduates burdened with student loan debt?
Well, first of all, we need to prevent them from getting in debt in the beginning. As a Board of Regent member, I've seen Scott Walker's appropriations for higher education go down, down, down. Well, tuition did go up and now it's leveling off because now we're holding that steady by the governor and the Republicans, which just absolutely straps everything. We have to reinvest to make sure that people don't go into debt. Second of all, clearly there's people up here that helps introduce legislation and create it. We have to let people have the opportunity to refinance their loans. But if we have to start at the beginning, we absolutely need to invest in our University of Wisconsin system to make sure that we don't burden them with the debt to start with. That's really important.
Thank you. Paul, you have 30 seconds. Please remain seated.
This morning, Todd Berry was on For the Record with Neil Heinen and made the observation that it's ludicrous to say that the University of Wisconsin is a public system when only 15% of its budget comes from the state of Wisconsin. First thing we do is we invest more money in the university and therefore lower the cost of tuition overall for the students. Second thing we do is we put together a coherent and a comprehensive plan of student loans so that the interest rates are not for the advantage of those investors at Wall Street, but the advantage of the student.
And Andy, please remain seated. 30 seconds.
So we've got to think outside the box. One of the very many fresh ideas I've been advocating is why don't we go out and recruit young graduates to come back to the state of Wisconsin. Tell them if you live here and you work here for a minimum of 6 months, instead of paying the state of Wisconsin state income tax, we'll allow you to take that very same amount to pay down your student debt for every year that you're employed full-time and living in the state of Wisconsin. That's a recruiting tool, it's a retention tool for every business in our state, and it sends a very loud message to young people that you're important and we want you here.
Andy, you may continue holding the microphone. This question is for you, and you may stand. You'll have 1 minute to respond. Andy, what 2 actions will you take immediately if elected governor that will not require legislative approval, and why?
That's an excellent question. That would not require legislative approval. Well, I guess what I would do is I would just go to the state of Wisconsin and say, listen, We do want the very best ideas. I don't care where they come from. Let's begin to listen to the people in our state and look for the best solutions that move us forward with jobs, education, and health care. Let's also send a very loud message that you cannot be polluting our state. So for those people who have wells that are pumping dry their neighbor's well, let's put an end to that. Let's put an end to the fact that we're draining our lakes, that people are breathing sand, that people are smelling noxious fumes. Let's make it very clear that in the state of Wisconsin, that is no longer.
Tony, you have 30 seconds. Please remain seated.
Sure, I take the Medicaid money and I quit appointing political hacks to run our agencies and actually appoint people that not only have expertise, but that they value the employees that they're working with, that they give their employees voice.
Refrain from applause.
I'm sorry. Anyway, we have to give voice to our employees and across state government. That can happen without any legislation. We have to hire the right, or appoint the right people to be secretaries, and we have to give people voice.
I'm going to remind the audience to please refrain from applause so that we have as much time with our candidates. In these 30-second responses, they really only have 30 seconds, and we want to be able to hear what it is that they have to say. Dana, you have 30 seconds.
The first thing I would do is put together that wage board and start moving towards moving these wages up. Second thing I'd do is appoint Secretary of DNR with the specific responsibility of putting the DNR on a track to make it an independent DNR. We've seen what a politicized DNR does. It does not protect our environment. It's a tool of far right-wing groups at this point. That's got to stop.
Finish. All right, this next question will be a question that each of you will have the opportunity to answer. We're going to start with Mike, and then we're going to move to Mike's left. You will have 1 minute, and you may stand. Mike, could you please give us an example of an experience that you have had working successfully on issues outside of your own culture?
Well, I spent 2 years in Mali in West Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I had an opportunity there to work with people who made on average $200 a year. They were living on less than $1 a day. I learned from them. I learned more than I taught, but I also was able to work with people in that country to help move their education system forward and to engage in community development projects that improved their ability to do market gardening and make more money for their families. But again, I tell you, you live in a place like that, you gain more than you give, you learn more than you teach. That was an extraordinary experience for me. That is a big part of why I'm here, as a matter of fact. That experience was a life-altering, life-changing experience for me.
Paul, 1 minute.
I'm really torn between several things I'm thinking about, but one of the most important was a project with Betty Banks and a group of African American women here in the city of Madison back in the 1990s. As you know, we've got documentation of so many different disparities in regards to race. Well, if you look at the records, there was a period in Madison for actually 8 years of steady decline of African American infant deaths to the point where it reached and was as low as white infant mortality. What had happened, and we don't know this in terms of documentation, but what we believe happened is that we not only had the traditional prenatal visits, but what occurred is Betty Banks and the women she worked with were constantly in contact with the pregnant mothers, reminding them on an almost daily basis of some of the reminders that the doctor would give about health care and nutrition.
You have 1 minute.
I'm blessed to be state superintendent, visit school districts all across the state, from Barron in the north, where the Somali kids are just doing wonderful job as far as being leaders in those communities and with those students. course, the Milwaukee Public Schools or any other urban school district in the state where I am actually able to work with young people of color. And it's not only edifying, but very, very, very humbling. The other thing that we've been doing in the last 7 years as a department is we're really working on a journey to make ourselves culturally competent. If we want to be leaders in the state, as an agency, we have to make sure that we have that competency to deal with folks from all across the state in a real productive, meaningful, and helpful way. And we're getting there as a state, but as an agency. But I have to tell you, when we do things like that, we have to change what's inside our heart. It isn't always about rote memory of different things. We have to change how we feel, and that we're doing that as an agency.
Andy, you have 1 minute.
Okay, so as one of many steps in my professional career, I sold my business and I joined a company that had raised $150 million and became their global president of valuation consulting. Had the opportunity to roll up businesses all over the world. And it was clear in every single one of those situations that Americans tend to come in as teachers and not students. What I learned and what I taught was when we're in with businesses, when we're in with anyone, it's all about listening, it's not about teaching. I employed that very same thing and started a operation called Kitchen Table Conversations here in the state. I invited people who were living very different lives to come to the table and talk to things, the issues that were dividing Wisconsin, with the intent of not being there to convince anybody of anything, but to listen to people's life experience and to take from that experience an opportunity to come together and work together on the issues that are dividing our state. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'll do as governor. Thank you.
And Dana, you have 1 minute.
I'm an attorney, and I'm a litigating attorney. And over the years, I've had truly the honor of representing people in Section 1983 discrimination cases and in cases of excessive use of force. It's an awful thing when you see a situation where someone cloaked in government authority injures someone, due in large part, perhaps completely, because of the color of their skin. You learn very quickly to step and walk and be in the other person's shoes in that situation. It's some tragic things that I've had over the years and involving the Eighth Amendment and other deprivations. And it makes you sensitive, it makes you understand the lives of people and how they should be respected. And so that would be my experience.
I represent 1,000 members of the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I am an adopted Ho-Chunk member. I have my own shawl, and I've learned how to dance in the powwow. And this summer, I worked with many friends of mine who were recovering from addiction, particularly heroin addiction. And we put together a recovery powwow where we worked with Natives Against Heroin and Stop the Stigma. And we brought in a lot of people who were in recovery and some people that were getting to recovery. And we worked to try to raise awareness of how much we need the services and how together we can help people on the journey to recovery, especially with our Native Americans.
And Kelly.
I have to say, I love this question. I think it's fascinating to hear us say something different. As an attorney, I've had the opportunity to represent immigrants pro bono, and that's always been fascinating. But I want to do something a little risky, given that this is a Democratic primary and we're all Democrats, and talk about some opportunities that I've had to work with Republicans. Because it really is a different culture, and it's risky. It's risky because I'm a fierce progressive, and I hold my values close to my heart. As I think we all do. When I was in law school, I had the opportunity to work on the Wisconsin Innocence Project. And unlike our current governor, I actually have gone to prisons all around the state and met with the people who are there. And I was convinced, as were our professors, that people are sitting in prison wrongfully convicted because of things that are totally preventable. And we helped work with some of the most conservative members of the state legislature to pass incredible landmark reforms that have helped reduce the rate of wrongful convictions. And that was amazing to me, to work with somebody like Mark Gundrum, who is totally the opposite on everything. And I'll do that as governor.
I grew up in Delvin, Wisconsin, so I had a lot of time working with people outside my culture. Like every day. No, but when I got on the job in the Madison Fire Department, I wanted to do something to give back to the community. So before I got involved in the union world, I actually worked for Briar Patch Services, which is now South Central Services of Wisconsin, I think, for children. And I was a street outreach coordinator. And I didn't grow up poor. I grew up as middle class as they come. My mother and father are still together. So I wanted to do something different and challenge myself. So when I worked for Briar Patch, our job as a street outreach coordinator was to literally go and talk to youth, connect them with services, connect them with housing, and there was no script. There was no, hey, this is a safe environment. We went into bad environments, talked to people that needed help, and try to link them up with services. So I enjoyed that. I did that for 2 years. When I left the firehouse, I would get dressed and go actually work in the street and try to connect homeless youth with services. So that was something totally different.
And Matt.
I lived in Mexico City in the 2nd and 3rd grade. My father was a Spanish professor doing research. Para la gente que habla español aquí, yo puedo hablar español y asistí a la escuela ahí, Fray Juan de Zumárraga, y fuimos cada domingo al parque de Chapultepec para jugar y manejar bicicleta. The rest of you, I just want to say this. This was an immersion school. This is not an American school. I couldn't even read the exams the first couple of weeks. It was very, very educationally intensive. People were very kind to me. And every time I see a Latino youngster right here, especially in Milwaukee, but anywhere in the state, I remember Matt Flynn, Mexico City, Fray Juan de Zumárraga, and I don't forget that.
All right. This has been really educational, hasn't it, over here? Each of you on stage has learned something about your neighbors that you're traveling around the state with, as everyone in the audience has had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you. We are going to move into our closing remarks. Each of the candidates is allowed 2 minutes for closing. They may stand for this process. And MAHLON, you get to kick us off.
All right, thank you all, and thank you to all the candidates. Thank you all for coming. My name is MAHLON. I'm running for governor because we need a change in our state. But we just can't go around talking about what's wrong with Walker. We have to talk about what's right with us. And what's right with us is we are proud progressives, proud liberals. Proud progressives who started Medicare. Proud progressives who ended slavery. Proud progressives who started Social Security. Proud progressives who brought the Voting Rights Act up. Proud progressives who brought the Civil Rights Act. Clean water and clean air. So we have to be proud of who we are. I ran once and I got 1,156,000 votes, but who's counting? I want to expound on that. I ran statewide once. I've been in all 72 counties. I represent firefighters all across the state. So I'm asking you to believe in yourselves. But I'm asking you also to believe in me, in the capacity for change and opportunities that we can create for all people in this state. We have a great opportunity here. This is going to be one of the biggest elections of our lives. But we have to work like hell to make sure that we win this thing. And we have to make sure we pick the right candidate. We have a lot of great candidates up here. But we've tried candidates that have been elected officials before. We've tried those that have had the business acumen before. Governor Walker's never seen anyone like me head to head. So we need to change things. We need to make sure we throw something different at them and make sure that we are proud progressives and know what we have to do. What's real in our state is the person in Eau Claire. When I talk to a mother and daughter sleeps on the floor and she thinks that's normal. What's real in this state is when I talked to a young teacher in Kenosha, and she had to sell her car just to pay for health insurance premiums, and she thinks that's normal. What's real is when I was in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I talked to that veteran, and a veteran that came back, did 2 tours of duty in Iraq, came back and said he's homeless and may not have a place to stay. So I'm asking you to believe in me, but more importantly, believe in yourselves, believe in the capacity for change. We have the fierce urgency of now to change our state, turn this thing around, and I'm the right candidate to do it. We need all hands working in our state, and I will make sure to take out Governor Walker.
Matt, 2 minutes.
There's an overriding issue in this campaign. Who can best beat Scott Walker? If we don't beat him this year in 2018, in 2020 he's going to redistrict, reapportion. When he does that, we're not going to recognize the state by the year 2030. Now, there are a lot of good people at these tables, on this stage. I could support any one of them they're the nominee, and they will support me if I'm the nominee. But you're sitting there, and as a microcosm of the state, you have to decide who is the most aggressive, the most experienced, and by ability, demeanor, you want on the stage. Visualize this in October of 2018, up against Scott Walker one-on-one, pointing out the lies and the fraud in his administration, setting out the Democratic vision, being the leader of your party, and the leader of your ideas. Who do you think is best able to beat Scott Walker? I think I am that person. I'm a Navy vet. As I go around the state, many of my fellow vets think it's a very good idea to put a vet in that governor's chair to fight that Republican legislature. Trump and Walker are not Dwight Eisenhower and Lee Sherman Dreyfus. This is a new era in the Republican Party. They have sold our country to the Russians through infiltration. They penetrated the Republican Party, the White House, and our government. And Scott Walker represents his donors, only his donors, nothing to do with the taxpayers of the state. I would like to be the leader of our party once again. I want to take him on next October, and I hope to earn the support of everybody in this room, not only here at this forum, but for the rest of the campaign, and stand up against him and beat him next year. Thank you very much.
Money is not going to decide this election. If it does, Scott Walker gets elected governor for the 4th time. Money will not decide this election. He will have way more than anybody. We are going to have to run a campaign that is truly grassroots, that is truly of, by, and for the people, that goes out to the forgotten places and reaches the forgotten people in this state. If you are looking for your Goliath, I would just remind you that it was David that defeated Goliath. It was David who brought down the giant. And another thing that will not beat Scott Walker, we will not beat Scott Walker by telling people over and over again what's wrong with Scott Walker. We have to be for something. We have to take a message to the people of Wisconsin about what we want this state to become, what it has the potential to be, and how we reach that potential. I want this state to again deserve the reputation we once had as a bastion of clean and open and honest government. I want this state again to be a state where if you work, you will not be poor. That means a living wage for every worker. It means debt-free education. It means taking high-speed internet to every nook and cranny of our state. It means reaching that goal and aiming for that goal of making our state the first state in the country fully powered by renewable energy. We can be that state, but we have to take that vision everywhere in the state, and we have to show passion, we have to show energy, we have to show a commitment to making this state the state that we dream that it has the potential to be. Thank you very much.
When I was relating the story about the work that Betty Banks and the group of women had done, there was a point I didn't get to make. So let me share with you another narrative and make that same point. As we went through 2016, homicides were rising in Madison. And on January 1st of 2017, Deputy Mayor Gloria Reyes and a group of people from the county, from nonprofits, a number of ex-offenders got together and started hammering out a plan. A plan as to how to reduce violence and retaliation within our community. Well, we launched that program in August, and if you recall, by August 4th of last year, we had 11 homicides. Since August 4th, we have not had a single homicide in the city. I don't attribute all of the success to that program. Certainly work with the Madison Police Department has something to do with it. But the point of that initiative and the point of the work that Betty Banks and the women that she shared responsibility with is that you have to trust the people you serve. You have to not just look for data-driven decisions, not just look for all the evidence and numbers that everybody wants these days, but at some point you have to trust, you have to come to realize that the people who you serve are the ones who have the answers. Now, a lot of folks say that the success of Madison is based on the state capitol and the university. Well, there's a lot of state capitals and a lot of universities, but ever since I first took elected office, the whole key is focusing on place, making sure that no one felt that they were a stranger in their own land. And that's what we need to do in Wisconsin.
So, obviously, from Lincoln Hills to Foxconn to our university system at K-12, Scott Walker's a disaster. We get that. But we also have to understand what leadership's all about and who can win this election. I will say, I believe I'm the best candidate to do that. A recent poll has me 18 percentage points ahead of any of the folks on the stage here. In addition, I'm very proud of the fact that I have Herb Cole and Senator Mark Miller and Sandy Pope, Spencer Black, Marvin Lawton, lots of others from across the state supporting this campaign. It is about leadership. It takes no leadership to shout the loudest. It takes no leadership to spend all our time talking about Scott Walker. We have to have a positive vision for the future. Mine is around education and restoring the middle class and making sure that our natural resources are protected. Establish a middle class is our absolute top priority. We have to figure out not only do we need a new minimum wage, but how do we get those best paying jobs, infrastructure jobs? How do we call the internet and infrastructure so that we also use that gas tax for taking internet all across the state of Wisconsin? This has to be about being positive. The other thing that's really important about this race is leadership is about building relationships. And my job, working to provide education to 860,000 kids in the state, 100,000 adults in those individual school districts, takes building relationships, not only all across the state, but also with the legislators. I've actually worked with Republicans to accomplish some things. So I believe leadership is an extraordinarily important component to making sure that we beat Scott Walker next November. I fully believe that will happen, and I thank you so much for your support. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Andy Groening. You probably figured out by now that I'm not a politician. And if I thought politics as usual was working, I wouldn't be here. But we have to beat Scott Walker. I've got kids that are 10 and 13. I've watched Scott Walker take apart the jewel of our state, the reason so many people actually live here. I've watched him attack our university professors. I've talked to people, to teachers in tears all over the state. That's not okay. That's not my Wisconsin, and I'm sure it's not your Wisconsin. We have people who are working 2, 3, and 4 jobs that used to work 1. We have those same people who are not sure if they can get to the end of the week and actually pay their rent. And I'll tell you what, folks, we have 30 to 60 seconds to connect with those people and convince them that we actually have a real plan that's going to make their life better. Because if we can't do that, if we can't convince people that we actually have a real plan that will create real good paying jobs and do it throughout the state of Wisconsin, we've got a real big problem. So I am an outsider, and I spent my entire career helping people create good paying jobs. We'll build on the strengths of Wisconsin. We'll create jobs in science, technology, manufacturing, and agriculture, because that's who we are. We'll be a world leader in those industries, and those jobs will create opportunities for absolutely everybody who lives here. We'll bring people back to our small towns by identifying the kinds of jobs training programs that pay families a living wage while they acquire the skills, the life skills and job skills that are needed to pull themselves out of poverty and also to help companies throughout the state of Wisconsin grow. Thank you. I'm looking forward to being your next governor.
I'm in this for people. A few years ago, I was representing a farm couple folks that have run a farm for 35 years. And their youngest son turned 18, and they lost badger care. And a few weeks later, Diane ended up with diabetes and ended up having her leg amputated. And a few months after that, Bruce was in a terrible car accident, ended up being a paraplegic. So the farm that they had owned for 35 years, and the farm that they had worked with their blood and sweat and toil, they had to sell, and they became hourly employees on the farm that they once had. These are the types of things that I have seen, and I have had enough of it. These are the types of things that we are going to fix in the state of Wisconsin. This government is for the people. It's going to be for the people. We are going to have badger care, buy-in. We are going to have health care for all. We are going to make darn sure that collective bargaining is reinstituted, and we're going to make sure that this anti-union legislation that Walker walked through this state is going to be repealed, because if you want a vibrant economy, if you want an economy that works for everyone, you've got to make sure that the middle class is expanding, and you've got to make sure that they have disposable income to generate the economy. They're the ones that buy the new cars, the new houses, do the work in this society, and bleed in this for us when there's a war. By God, they need economic justice. We're going to have an environment that's clean. I've offered legislation to save the Deer bill, the CWD bill, and we're going to have an education system that's fully funded. That's our future. We are fighting for the future of this state. I'm the one that can carry this message and win this battle.
To win, we have to change the way we run campaigns. Trump won because a lot of new voters showed up to the polls for the first time. And Hillary got the motivated people, but she didn't get the people that needed to be motivated. When I did my little journey I told you about earlier, I found out that in Trumpelow County, 12% of the people who went to the polls voted for the first time. In Whitehall, the county seat, 24% of them voted for the first time. I was recently in Rice Lake, and they said there 18% of the people who voted in 16 voted for the first time. We're told by consultants we need to raise more money. We need to memorize the talking points, and we shouldn't talk to voters who are not registered. Clearly, the Republicans broke that rule. We are told by the consultants we're going to fight over the 3 to 4% in the middle. I suggest to you that we instead think about fighting over the 30 to 40% of people who sporadically vote. This, or don't vote at all. This changes our message, it changes our strategy, it changes our campaign, and it changes our candidate. I am a very different type of candidate. I came to politics late in life. I was the daughter of a union laborer. My first job was as a nurse's aide. I know what it's like to grow up on food stamps or be without health insurance. I put myself through college. I became a college professor. I taught health policy. And then I became a full-time dairy farmer. I know what it's like to be slapped in the face with a nasty tail of a cow at 4 a.m. So Republican attacks don't bother me at all.
I can't compete with that, but I have been spit up on at 4 a.m. I'm KELDA Royce, and I'm running for governor because I want this state to be a place of opportunity and fairness again. I want this state to be the very best place to raise a family and the best place to grow a business. And the reason that we're all here is because we want that too. Every person on this stage is a good person. We have so many shared values. And we talked about a lot of them tonight. But the only thing that matters for all of our values is if we beat Scott Walker in November. So let's set aside the issues, which are very important, and talk about what we should be looking for in a candidate. Of course we want somebody who's right on the issues. I have been fighting for progressive values my entire career. I have a 100% pro-choice voting record. I've stood on some of the toughest issues where other Democrats, I'm not saying anybody on the stage, but other Democrats might fear to tread, attacking racial disparities, making sure that we can stop mass incarceration. I've had the courage to do what is right every single time. We also want someone who's putting together a campaign that can win. Somebody who is going to be able to reach the groups of voters that we need to engage. People who have been turned off by politics, people who don't vote very often because they don't know what the difference is between parties. People like women, independent women who have been powering the victories that we've seen all over this country and that we've seen up in the special election that we just had in this 10th Senate district. And people who are going to get young people to turn out and vote. Because when people my age and younger go to the polls, Democrats win. And we need that. Finally, we need to have somebody who is ready to be governor. Governor is not an entry-level job, and we cannot afford to blow this opportunity if we elect someone who then is not able to get things done. I've been able to work with Republicans, I've been able to work with Democrats, I've worked in the private sector and the nonprofit sector, and I've gotten things done every single time. I'm right on the issues, I'm putting together a campaign that's going to win, and I am ready to be your governor. I ask for your vote on August 14th and again on November 6th. Thank you.
All right, folks, what a great evening, huh? Candidates, not only for being here tonight at this forum, but also for putting yourselves and sacrificing so much to run for office. It's clear that you really love Wisconsin, and I appreciate it, and I know that everyone here does as well. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank LaFollette High School, the Side Progressives, I'm having a little mic issue here, and the many other action teams from across Dane County pulled together to help this forum happen tonight. This isn't something that just snaps together. There's been a lot of dedicated volunteers making this come together for each and every one of us. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge each and every one of you that took time out of your lives to be here tonight in order to engage in our democracy and to be better and more informed citizens. Whether you're sitting here in the audience or you're watching on live stream, this is how we make a difference, and we bring a government that stands up for the people of our state. I do have one request of you each tonight. If you are able, if you could please help us defray the cost of this evening. This ballooned into quite something. There are volunteers at the exits, and they have baskets. If you could please drop a little bit of cash of the donation into those boxes as you leave tonight, that would help us defray the costs to put this forum on. And if you do have additional questions, and I hope that you do, I hope this has sparked your curiosity and dedication into helping a progressive Democrat win this election for the candidates that are here tonight, I encourage you to please reach out to each and every one of them, because I know that they would be happy to continue to dialogue with you. And one more thing. Remember, this is just the beginning. We have a long and hard road ahead of all of us. And it's surely going to be a very exciting 10 months here in Wisconsin. So get your walking shoes on, get your dialing fingers ready, because politics and democracy is not a spectator sport. It takes each of us linking arms together in order to make this happen. So please stay engaged. After all, that is the key to ensuring that our democracy will work for each and every one of us. Thank you very much for being here.